The Spinning World. Narrated by Edward Kitchen. Copyright Edo Productions 2020. The spinning world was his home, and he wanted nothing more than for it to stop. The centrifugal tug of war intoxicated him, and higher thoughts slipped through the fleshy tubes of his mind to be flung out in who knows what direction. Fighting would be useless. There was nothing to act as a lever or a pulley, nothing to create an opposing force. The only thing pulling at him was gravity. Go with the flow, accept it. Isn't that what people said? Some people did, anyway. Drunk, his head swirled. The constant inebriating motion was giving him a high. Something slapped against his forehead. Rude, focusing, breaking him out of his daze and allowing him to think again. Opening his eyes was not something he wished to do, but his left foot felt cold. That, paired with the slap, caused him to deduce that he might be missing a shoe. He had to find out. He thought about how it wasn't in human nature to catalogue every time you do something for the last time, but he resolved to do so from now on. Perhaps not that much of a commitment, considering his present circumstances, but he vowed to do it nonetheless. Strange. The last time he would ever wear a left shoe. Where would his shoe go? It had to have been lost to the ether by now, spun off into the vast open air to land where? Perhaps it would land on some poor soul's head, or in the middle of a cornfield and be mulched come harvest time, and end up on the plates of a dozen hard-working families across the world. Shoe souffle, anyone? He had read somewhere about hotel jumpers, and how, when they hit the pavement, their shoes flew off. A grim factoid that he couldn't help but find humorous when he pictured it. If he opened his eyes, he might spot the shoe. A tiny black dot somewhere out there in the blue. But what would be the point? It wasn't as if he could get it back. Perhaps, he thought, if the world straightened out a bit, and the spin stopped, he could sort of swim over to it. Was that how it worked? He'd seen it in dozens of movies, and hoped, but doubted it was. Forcing his eyes open just a little, his eyelids rebelled, fighting to shut against his will. Wind battered his eyeballs, and they stung and filled with water. He was confronted by the horizontal green-blue blur that he knew would be there. The world had not stopped. Not at all. Had he really expected physics to change just for him? How preposterous humans could be. This whole mess had certainly been a blow to his ego. Well, better to face the music with my eyes open, he thought. Wasn't that what people said? Face the music? The phrase made little sense to him. He supposed he'd never taken the time to think about it properly, and he certainly didn't have that time now. But he resolved at least to stare reality in the face. And so he did. The blur filled his vision. Furiously, he blinked away wind-generated tears. He was cold, numb in fact. Looking down at his feet, he found that his own body held its place in the spin. Static, apart from his clothes, which flipped and flapped. He had guessed correctly. He was missing a left shoe. How embarrassing. Craning his neck up, or perhaps it was down, he strove to separate the blue-green colours, but the spin was relentless. It was everything and nothing all at once. He reached out to try and touch it, but of course came away empty-handed. Something so soft and intangible can't be the end of me, he thought. There goes that ego again. Then, through no effort of his own, one colour did stand out. Green, then blue, then green. The blur turned into two alternating colours, flashing before his eyes. Suddenly, the green overpowered the blue, and was all around him. He heard rustling and cracking, things became sharper, and he began to be able to make out The Spinning World has been brought to you by Edo Productions. Narrated by Edward Kitchen. Copyright Edo Productions 2020.